Hello everyone. I'm starting a new video series today, and this is really me going over my Readwise highlights, and I'll talk about what Readwise is. And it's an experiment. Let's see how it goes. I'm not sure if I can do this every day. I mean, I'll try to, but I do want to get it, to some level of consistency eventually. But for now, it will be like more of a best effort basis. Right, and so the video series would be, every day. There is a tool called Readwise which will surface certain highlights for me, highlights from different books and articles and tweets. It's an excellent tool. I mean, I'm really enjoying this. I've been using it from over 528 days. Like 528 days is a series, but I mean, I've been using it since before then, and it's been excellent. It's very helpful. All the books that I've read, it gets connected to this, over Kindle and things like Libby. Like that's for local libraries. If you borrow ebooks from libraries, and from articles, from tweets. I think it's excellent that like different snippets and everything. I mean, of course, there are a lot more connections possible. I just have five connections, and yeah, it's configured to surface highlights, every day. I've configured it to show 10 highlights, and I review it every day. I have been putting it on LinkedIn, but I'm thinking, okay, why not do a little bit different with that, so I'm going to try that today, and hopefully it goes well. I have, if you've not used Readwise before, I have put an invite link in the description below, and yeah, that's an affiliate. I mean, like kind of like an affiliate link. So if you use that to register, we both get a month each. And I will also link to the product pages for each of the books that comes up in this review. And yeah, they're also affiliate links. So if you buy using those links, I may get some commission. So with that out of the way, let's start with today's review. And yeah, so all right, this is the first highlight. It's from a book called Sea of Tranquility. It's a novel fiction, and this is about, I think, kind of like time travel. It's a very interesting approach to time travel, and it's fun to read. I really enjoyed the book, and the quote is, "This is the strange lesson of living in a pandemic. Life can be tranquil in the face of death." So this is set of the, like in one of the ages. I think it is something around 2100s, and there is this author who just made it back to moon. So like she lives on moon in a colony, and so she just made it back to moon in time to before there were shutdowns due to pandemic. And I mean, it's of course, it mirrors the experience of our recent pandemic experience itself. And I think like about few months into the shutdown, into the lockdown, there is this kind of like a tranquil nature to the life. The description, like they're each stuck to their rooms, and they're trying to work from home and everything. And there is this kind of like a tranquility associated with the description. And it's really a moving quote, that life can be tranquil in the face of death. You're dealing with death every day, you're worried about it, but still, it's life goes on. So it's really intriguing quote. Well, let's move on. So this is from a book called Working Backwards. This is, it's written by Amazon employees, ex-employees, I think, and it's really about everything about Amazon. How they work, how they've structured the organization, what the principles, their, I think the leadership principles. I think they're quite well known. They have something like 14 leadership principles. It might change, I guess, but yeah. So I think this is more about about how to structure teams, and really about how do you think of uh, basically, when you're building a team, how do you think about structuring the team and the tasks that team is going to take over. uh, it mirrors the discussion in Conway's law, where it says that the architecture of software, it mirrors the architecture of the organization. So over here the method is that you build teams, which are single threaded in nature, right? And a single person, we're talking about leader over here, the leader of that team. It's that this person is unencumbered by competing responsibilities. Oh, did I read the quote? Yeah, let me read the quote. The answer lies in an Amazon innovation called single threaded leadership, in which a single person, unencumbered by competing responsibilities, owns a single major initiative and heads up a separable, largely autonomous team to deliver its goals. So, like the quote says, the team is autonomous, and this kind of mirrors in the structure of the organization. I just mentioned Conway's law like a little earlier, and of course, I think it can, to me, it also mirrors what I've read about in this other book called the team topologies. And there is this discussion about cognitive load on a team. So the principle being that you structure your teams so that they can take the cognitive load, not by some arbitrary mechanism as like technology or anything, but the amount of cognitive load a team can take up. So again, I think this kind of intersects with the ideas of competing responsibilities and initiatives and autonomous teams. Teams will be autonomous only if they can uh, own their area of the product, right? And of course, it's not easy. It's not easy as easy as this quote is sounding it to be. It's very difficult to achieve something like this in practice, and it has to be mirrored both on the organization level and the software level. So there's another thing in Amazon. It's called that the two pizza team. Something like a team should not contain more people than that can be fed by two pizzas. So that, like, that kind of makes it like 9 to 12 people, I think, per team, and you should not exceed that really. Again, so the idea is that if you have more people, the cognitive load, the number of communication channels, the whole grid, it becomes really complex, and it doesn't work. So you break up the problem. Like, that's the whole challenge over here. How do you achieve single threaded leadership by a single threaded team? So let's go on. Okay, so another quote by working backwards. Amazon leaders toil over the execution details and regularly embody the dive deep leadership principle, which states leaders operate at all levels, stay connected to the details, audit frequently, and are skeptical when metrics and anecdotes differ. No task is beneath them. So to me, it also kind of very closely relates to another book I recently read called Extreme Ownership. And there is this line from that, leaders own everything in their world. So there's nothing like no task beneath them. They have to look at the different details. There's nobody else to blame. Yeah, delegation is important, of course. It's not, this doesn't say that you shouldn't delegate. You should delegate, but then you're also going to stay connected to the details, like the line says. You're going to audit frequently. You're going to keep a close eye as what's to, to keep a close eye on what's happening. If, like, for example, when metrics and anecdotes differ, why is it differing? What's missing in the picture, and you try to uh, come together, like, bring all of this together to build kind of like a unified truth of what's happening in the team at that particular moment. And like it says, no task is beneath them. And I think that this is mirrored in that other book, Extreme Ownership, as well. um, as a leader, you own everything in your world, and yeah, no task is beneath you. So let's move on. Okay, so NLP, this is not neuro-linguistic program. No, wait, this is neuro-linguistic programming. It's not natural language processing. Yeah, it was a book I read, I think, long back, so I'm not really sure. I don't remember much, and I don't really have the context of this. So I'm just going to skip it. Okay, Originals is it's a really nice book by Adam Grant. So in this he says moving first is a tactic, not a goal. Peter Thiel writes in 0 to 1. Being the first mover doesn't do you any good if someone else comes along and unseats you. So, like the book's title says, it's about being original, being the first inventor, or, like making something new, being the first in a market space or something. And it's really a discussion about, is that important? Is that everything? Like, should you really drop everything else and aim to be the first? And the book makes a case, not really. And there are dozens of examples in the book about, um, like what could happen. Just being first doesn't make a difference. You could build on somebody else's invention and solve a problem that nobody else saw. This is something that came up in working backwards also. Like Amazon doesn't really care about being the first. Like they have this principle of customer obsession. So yeah, they keep an eye. They want to build new things, but not until it solves a meaningful customer problem. So really, I think there are many ways to slice this, but really it comes down to this. It's not about being first. It's about what you do with it. Let's move on. So this is a book called Seven and a Half Lessons About the Brain. I'm reading this right now. I think somewhere midway uh, in this book. And let's see. So everyone who's ever learned a skill, whether it's driving a car or tying a shoe, knows that things that require effort today become automatic tomorrow with enough practice. They're automatic because your brain has tuned and pruned itself to make different predictions that launch different reactions. As a consequence, you experience yourself and the world around you differently. That is a form of free will, or at least something we can arguably call free will. We can choose what we expose ourselves to. So this chapter, I think it's about uh, the predictive capability of brain. Brains can predict something that's going to happen before it actually happens. I'm like, I won't go too deep into the examples. You can read the chapter. So in the beginning, if brains can predict, do we really have free will? It starts with that question, and this quote is near the end of the chapter. Like with everything that we learn about the predictive capabilities of brains, what does it mean? So the author makes a point that it doesn't matter that your you know that your brain can predict stuff that happens, uh, but there is another function of a brain that's learning. Because when predictions don't happen as they should, like that's not the reality. Brain predicts it. There's a probability it may happen, it may not happen, and when it doesn't happen, brains learn from that. The opposite also, if it does happen, brains do learn from that as well. The neural pathways get stronger, and of course, this explains a lot of things like uh, the instinctive reactions and also bias. So um, the discussion over here really, it talks about this learning process, and it tells that the brain has tuned and pruned itself to make different predictions that launch different actions, based on what you've learned in the past. Every time you drive a car, it's mostly the same, but the experience is different. Brains, it learns, it rewires itself based on each and every experience. That's what makes practice. That's what makes a habit. So you experience yourself and the world around you differently with each and every experience, right? And that is a form of free will. It's not like the brain is giving you a choice, but we can choose what we expose ourselves to, and that rewires our brain, and that's a form of free will. Not in the deterministic sense of like that Rene Descartes' determinism, but yeah, we still have control over we some control over what we choose. I'm not saying we have absolute control, but we have some control, and that is a form of free will. So let's move on. Another book called Get It Done. um, in the other dynamic, which I call progress promotes balancing, the motivation for pursuing a goal stems from a lack of progress. When you haven't yet made much progress, you're motivated to keep trying. But when you look back and see that you've made a good amount of progress, you feel that you can loosen the reins. Okay, so there is, Get It Done. This book is quite in depth, an analysis of science of motivation. So I'm not really sure how good of a job I can do explaining this. So there are different situations, where your motivation, you get motivated differently based on how you see the task. Are you How competent are you at the task? How much do you identify with it? With the goal that you want to reach. How much do you identify with it? And based on all of these different factors, progress may have a different impact on your motivation, right? So if you've not progressed that much on a goal that um, that you identify with, there is a motivation to keep trying, because you identify with that goal, you want to reach there, so there is this thing. Okay, you're motivated to keep trying, and if you don't identify very much, if you're doing something just because you're being told to, it may be the opposite, right? But okay, again, back to this quote. um, but when you look back and see that you've made a good amount of progress, you can feel that you loosen the reins, right? So it also means that, okay, if you're, like, for example, if you're on a journey to lose weight, your goal is to lose 10 kgs, let's say, and you have lost 8 kgs so far. And it just explains that, I mean, something very obvious, that okay, you made it to 8 kgs. Again, depending on how you view the goal, I mean, are you like a perfectionist? No, it has to be 10 kgs. Then your behavior might be different. But again, in some cases, again, depending on how you see different things, you might loosen the reins. That okay, I've reached 8 kg. Okay, I can probably have an extra, uh, you know, um, like an extra pizza slice or something. you know. All right. So let's move on. Okay, this book is The Prophet. It's a classic. It's a really nice book. For the vision of one man lends not its wings to another man. And even as each one of you stands alone in God's knowledge, so must each one of you be alone in his knowledge of God and in his understanding of the earth. So this whole book is a poem, right? And um, I really can't do a good job translating it, right? It's like they say that when you attempt to translate a poem, you lose the poem. So I think what it means to me right now, based on what I remember, it's that it's actions that matter, not the vision. You may have uh, like one man's vision. It doesn't really. It's not enough to kind of motivate somebody else to act or move ahead. It has to be paired with some action. Some action along the lines of the vision. Vision is important. I'm not saying that it's not important, but it's not enough. It's just the foundation. It's just the beginning. You still need more. Anyway, like I said, I think this is a text that has to be read in its entirety to really appreciate it. So I don't think I can do more over here. So let's move on. So this book called 4,000 Weeks, again, really nice book. I really enjoyed this one. So it says, when you aim for this degree of control over your attention, you're making the mistake of addressing one truth about human limitation, your limited time, and the consequent need to use it well, by denying another truth about human limitation, which is that achieving total sovereignty over your attention is almost certainly impossible. So this book is, I mean, it says time management for mortals, right? But like the point it makes is that you can't manage time, because I mean it goes into what is time, what does time mean to you, what really is time, um, various philosophical angles, and I'm not going into that right now. But over here, it's just talking about your need to focus on certain things, because like let's say you had 24 hours in a day and 8 hours of work time, and you want to wrap up all, like including your learning, your growth, and your work, everything in that 8 hours, and you want to say that okay, no, I'm going to focus completely on a particular task. So you're really saying that you're conflicting that with uh, that limitation, that that our limited time, that's a limitation that we have, right? We are conflicting that with something else, that we can't really focus on something completely. It is impossible, you know and the book goes again, it's very elaborate in how it goes about how it explains the different aspects of attention, of time. Again, I think it's really difficult to explain this just from the quote. I'll move on. Okay, we have a quote from originals. Reasoning communicates a message of respect. It implies that had children but known better or understood more, they would not have acted in an inappropriate way. It is a mark of esteem for the listener, an indication of faith in his or her ability to comprehend, develop, and improve. So I'm thinking I'm kind of mixing this up with another book called Think Again, and that's where I think the author talks about how children develop, how they pick up over a longer term, how they pick up things like rules of society, and like basic rules of humanity. So I mean, based on what I remember, what this reminds me is the need to reason out, even with children, rather than directing them to do something. There is, it helps, I mean, it helps if you can paint the picture of why a certain thing is required, like reasoning it out, and that leaves a stronger message on the child, that like rather than forcing them to do something because the society doesn't want you to do that thing, right? Like being nice for the sake of being nice, sorry, being nice for the sake of the society, because what will other people say, uh, that might get you short term results, but the longer term results are like being nice because you're a human being in a society of humans. So um, it's not a great example, but again, it's the best I can recall right now. So that completes our 10 highlights for today. Like I said, this 11th highlight is like a book recommendation. Sometimes something interesting comes up. It doesn't look like that right now. I mean, it's interesting in the same way identities change in practice as we start doing new things, crafting experiments, interacting with different people, shifting connections, and reinterpreting our life stories through the lens of emerging possibilities. Making sense. It's kind of intriguing, but I mean, um, maybe for some other day. So that completes our highlights today. Like I said, I have put links to the different things, to the books and to Readwise itself in the description below. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have been with me so long, thank you.